Two world wars, 31 years apart, fought across different continents with different weapons by different generations of soldiers. But both wars were decided in part by a single type of aircraft that neither side fully understood when the fighting started. In the First World War, that aircraft was invented by accident and changed warfare in 8 months. In the second, it was a fighter with enough range to fly to Berlin and back, and it saved a bombing campaign that was failing so badly that commanders were quietly discussing whether to abandon it entirely. Neither aircraft was expected to matter as much as it did. Both changed everything. World War I, the gun that ate the sky. In 1914, the British War Office published an assessment that described military aircraft as useless for army work. They published it 3 months before the first aerial dogfight in history. What planes were actually used for in the opening months was reconnaissance. A pilot flew over enemy lines, noted where the artillery and troops were positioned, and reported back. Neither side initially had any doctrine for fighting in the air. The first aerial kills involved pilots throwing bricks and grappling hooks at each other from open cockpits. One Russian pilot rammed an Austrian reconnaissance aircraft in September 1914 and killed them both. Both sides quickly recognized that the other side's reconnaissance planes were giving away positions that cost lives on the ground. The informal courtesy between pilots ended fast. The practical problem with putting a machine gun on a front-engined aircraft was the propeller. A forward-facing gun fired directly through the spinning blade arc and destroyed the plane's own propeller. Early solutions were clumsy. Some aircraft fitted steel deflectors to the blades to redirect bullets. The deflectors damaged the blades gradually and worked badly. In 1915, a Dutch engineer named Anthony Fokker developed a proper solution. He built an interrupter gear that synchronized the machine gun's firing rate to the rotation of the propeller. The gun fired in the gaps between the blades. Not a single bullet hit the propeller. He fitted it to a monoplane called the Fokker Eindecker. For the next 8 months, Germany owned the Western Front sky. Allied pilots began calling their own aircraft Fokker fodder. British and French reconnaissance planes were being destroyed at rates that made meaningful battlefield observation nearly impossible. The period became known as the Fokker Scourge. Both countries experimented with workaround designs while their engineers raced to develop a synchronized gun of their own. The human cost was extraordinary. In April 1917, a month the Royal Flying Corps later called Bloody April, the average life expectancy of a newly arrived British pilot on the Western Front was 11 days, not because the Eindecker was still dominant by then, because the training pipeline could not keep pace with the losses regardless of which German aircraft was doing the killing. The Allied answer when it arrived properly was the Sopwith Camel, fast, powerfully armed with twin forward-firing Vickers guns, and extraordinarily maneuverable. It was also dangerous to inexperienced pilots. The rotary engine produced a gyroscopic torque that made right turns almost effortless and left turns difficult to control. More Camel pilots died in training accidents than in actual combat. The ones who survived training mastered it completely. The Sopwith Camel accounts for 1,340 confirmed aerial kills, the highest total of any Allied aircraft in the war. By 1918, both sides had organizations, tactics, training programs, and thousands of purpose-built aircraft dedicated entirely to controlling a sky that 4 years earlier nobody had considered worth fighting for. The bridge. The First World War proved one thing clearly enough that no military planner missed it. Whoever controls the sky controls what happens below it. Every major power spent the interwar years building faster, higher performing aircraft and developing the doctrine to use them. The pilots who survived the Western Front became the designers and generals of the Second War. They knew exactly what air superiority cost to lose and what it took to win back. What they had not fully solved was range. A fighter that could dominate the air over its own territory was useful. A fighter that could extend that dominance deep into enemy territory changed the entire calculation. The Second World War showed what happened when that problem went unsolved and what happened when someone finally solved it. World War II, holding the line and winning the war. In the summer of 1940, Germany had overrun France in 6 weeks and expected Britain to negotiate. When Churchill refused, the Luftwaffe was ordered to destroy the Royal Air Force and clear the way for a land invasion across the Channel. The aircraft that held Britain was the Supermarine Spitfire. Designed by Reginald Mitchell, who died of cancer in 1937 and never saw a single day of the war his aircraft would define, the Spitfire matched Germany's Messerschmitt, Bf-109 directly in contested airspace. The Bf-109 had a technical advantage. Fuel injection allowed German pilots to push into a dive and accelerate immediately. A Spitfire pilot had to half roll before diving, or the carburetor cut out and the engine stopped. The Luftwaffe built tactics around this. British engineers patched it within months. Germany lost the Battle of Britain in September 1940. The invasion never happened. It was the first time German forces had been stopped in the war, and it happened entirely in the air, 15,000 feet above the English countryside. And 3 years later, the Allies were facing a different problem. The strategic bombing campaign against German industry was failing. B-17 Flying Fortresses sent to hit German factories were being intercepted and destroyed at rates the 8th Air Force could not sustain. The P-47 Thunderbolt escorts had a combat radius of 300 miles. They could fly the bombers to the German border, then had to turn back for fuel. German fighter controllers watched the escorts leave on radar and sent their interceptors in exactly at that moment. In October 1943 at Schweinfurt, the Americans lost 60 bombers and 600 men in 2 days. Senior commanders were privately asking whether the daylight bombing campaign should continue at all. The North American P-51 Mustang answered that question. Originally designed in 117 days after the British asked North American Aviation for a new fighter, the early Mustang was mediocre above 15,000 feet. The British suggested swapping its Allison engine for a Rolls-Royce Merlin, the same engine powering the Spitfire. The result was one of the fastest and most capable fighters either side produced in the entire war. More importantly, it had range that no other Allied fighter possessed. With external drop tanks, the P-51 could escort bombers from England to Berlin and back. The Luftwaffe had built its entire interception system around the assumption that no single-engine American fighter could reach the German capital with fuel left to fight. That assumption protected them for 2 years. On March 4, 1944, Mustangs escorted bombers to Berlin for the first time. German pilots who had been hunting unescorted bombers past the escort boundary found American fighters beside the formations all the way to the target. By the end of 1944, 14 of the 15 fighter squadrons in the 8th Air Force flew P-51s. The aircraft destroyed nearly 5,000 enemy planes over Europe. The air superiority it established over Germany made the Normandy invasion viable 2 months later. 2 wars, 2 defining aircraft, neither of them the most famous machine of their era. The Fokker-Eindecker is not the plane people picture when they think of WWI. The Red Baron's triplane is, but the Eindecker created the concept that the triplane was built to exploit. And the Sopwith Camel, not the SE-5 or the Spad, closed the account on the Western Front with 1,340 kills. The P-51 is less iconic than the Spitfire, but the Spitfire held a line. The Mustang won a campaign. There is a meaningful difference between those two things, and history has not always been fair about which aircraft deserves more credit for the outcome. Both wars confirmed the same truth the first dogfight over the Western Front had suggested. Control of the sky is not a bonus. It is the condition everything else depends on. The soldiers on the ground, the ships at sea, the bombers over a target,